if you have great people, you can have a great business. And you can't have some great and some not great, because the ungreat people, the weak people, are going to pull the rest down.
People have a tendency to value something that they created more than something that they bought. And by taking someone along that story of realizing the effort that went into creating this, that's going to increase the value that someone holds of this product.
You need to get your house in order before you start to do other things. And our house in order was saying, well, we've got this market in South Africa. Let's get that right first before you start getting distracted about international.
It's also that difference now when it's about like not just getting more people within operations. It's actually around like enhancing capabilities and strategic capabilities in the business.
We were quite early to market, but we weren't too early. And it's allowed us to now position ourselves, 10 years down the line as a leader in that space.
I just want to know, what's the biggest challenge that you had to really overcome in this business as it evolved so much in the past 4 years? Hello and welcome back to the Founder Files. Today I'm going to be talking to Jasper Eales, who is the co-founder and creative director of Sealand Gear. Now, if you haven't heard of Sealand, this is an extremely sustainable company based out of Cape Town, South Africa, that upcycles materials into amazing bags and other accessories, and soon apparel, in terms of how they navigate their business. And it's just an amazing story of being proudly South African and building a really sustainable company. And that's what we get into in the beginning. We talk about what it means to be a sustainable company, why this was such an important focus for Jasper and his co-founders to begin with, and how it is that they've maintained that, but how that's also tested their production and manufacturing as they scale. Getting international certifications that took 6 years to be able to really give them the stamp of approval of their level of world-class sustainability, and obviously much, much more. So we talk about the challenges around scaling this manufacturing and production capability across South Africa, getting into other factories and facilities worldwide, the challenges of upcycling materials and making sure that you've got a consistent source of that. We then also talk about the culture that they have in their business and what it means to be a Sealander, and the importance of having people that are really aligned to this ethos. And, obviously, as we get with many founders, what inspires Jasper at the end of the day, and why is it that he cares so much about this? So if you're inspired by this story, and if you're as excited about Sealand as I am, and you want to hear more insights from founders like Jasper about how they scaled their business, then you want to make sure that you are following the podcast now. Right? Otherwise, you're going to miss loads of other stories so that you can avoid years of trial and error in scaling your business. It's also the best way to support the podcast and the best way to make me as the host happy. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you're looking forward to this episode, but enough from me for now. Jasper Eales, over to you. Welcome to the Founder Files, the podcast that's like eavesdropping on a conversation with a successful entrepreneur over a fireside chat. Join me, Cameron Coots, through this unique experience of unfiltered stories and insights from scaling founders around the globe as they share their ups, downs, and everything in between. Jasper, welcome to the Founder Files. I think the nature of South African entrepreneurship is that a lot of people get successful in B2B. I haven't had that many B2C founders on the podcast. So to get someone who's in building product direct to consumer, I'm excited for this conversation because there's a lot to learn. So welcome.
Yeah, Cameron, thanks so much for having me. Stoked to finally be chatting to you. And after our first interaction and meeting and doing some then yoga and breathing exercises, to then me telling my story to a nice intimate group of people, it's fantastic to arrive here today and hopefully share a great story with your audience. And thanks so much for having me.
100%, man. I actually even forgot to mention that original context of how we met. And I think that's also so good. It's so on brand for you and what we're going to be talking about the business, that's how we met. So this is awesome as a kickoff. But yeah, Jasper, Sealand, right? Anyone who doesn't know your brand, your company by now, tell me about the business. Tell me about the business model, how it works.
Yeah, so Sealand is, in very, very simple terms, is a sustainably driven business, which is a direct-to-consumer model, where we have, within our business model, we look at the design, the conceptualization, the sourcing, the whole value chain of the creation, as well as the manufacture, and then the retail component. So that's kind of like the intrinsics of what we do. But ultimately, we are a purpose-led lifestyle brand, which focuses on making bags and accessories, and in its truest form, an upcycling. So where we take a previously spent material or used material and we rework that material into a new value without breaking it down, which is recycling, which, you know, is amazing, but is generally quite energy efficient, energy inefficient, water intensive, and so on. Upcycling um, doesn't break it down, but removes components which are non-usable and revalues components and areas which are value. And so in an example, we take old advertising banners and create new value. Once they finish their campaign in store, we intercept prior to landfall and rework those banners and cut them and make them the internal panels of our bag, which makes, very vibrant and unique internal lining every time round. And, we've got a saying, our tagline in our business is together we make our planet better. And that speaks to people and planet. And it's about how, as a collective, not only Sealand, but, everybody, the custodians and the customers of our brand, as well as internally, is together. So it's all of us, we're all responsible. We're coming together, working for the bettering, to say that, we're never there. We've always got to continuously work towards improving, because perfection doesn't really exist. You've got to continue to work to improve, and so collectively we've got to work together to make things better and to be more responsible when it comes to people and planet.
Yeah, 100%. I want to just go a little bit deeper because my background, I used to work at TFG and actually worked in the sustainability department. So I actually got quite a lens into the supply chain and value chain of retail and just how unsustainable it is. And so I had an appreciation for how complex what you do is, and also from an affordability perspective to really be able to upcycle these materials, produce it new, produce something new from upcycled materials and sell those in an affordable way. I guess talk to me about the original story around putting this together and how you managed to find that first kind of set of products, that right kind of price point where you could see this really taking off.
I think it almost got to take a few steps backwards before you get to, landing on this idea of building products from waste material, because the journey started long before Sealand actually was established in 2015. And it's got a lot to do with many, many facets of my upbringing, from having very entrepreneurial parents who worked within, let's say, the rag trade industry, which is the design and production of clothing. And so they had a kids' clothing label called Nachi Clothing. And that became quite a successful business in its time. So having this upbringing with parents which are very creative, very entrepreneurial, and certainly encouraging those behaviors and thought processes as a child growing up was obviously to the benefit of where I find myself today. And also just the value system in terms of our upbringing. Myself and I've got two younger brothers. It was very much around, being respectful and appreciating nature and engaging in nature, spending time on the beach and surfing, doing nippers, which is junior life saving, going on hikes in the mountain and looking for streams and rock pools to swim in, and camping, and really just embracing and enjoying the outdoors and the lifestyle of outdoors, which inherently just built this respect for nature and also an incredible love for nature. So that speaks then to, again, one of the important components of what Sealand stands for. And then on the same level, but outside of, the natural playgrounds, it speaks to respect to people. Both my parents worked. It wasn't like my dad was the breadwinner and my mom stayed at home and looked after the kids. It was very equal. There was a lot of respect in terms of, just general respect of respecting your elders, respecting women, seeing people on equal levels, and just being a polite young lad, I suppose, and being brought up in that way. So that brought this real value to humans and to people, and to making sure that whether it's whoever it may be, whether it's a gardener or whether it's a senior business person, you've got to show, you engaging with people based on trusting them and respecting them, and give them some time, and make sure that there's a level of respect there which is consistent. And if I look then, where we are today as a business at Sealand, there's been a huge focus on this people and planet component and the respect and How do we treat the planet really well? How do we treat people really well? And build this culture around that within the business. And so, that's again like been integrated into when we started the brand. It's creating these foundational principles, ones of respect and care, sustainability, a long term view, like not looking and realizing that things don't just happen overnight. You've got to be focused and realize that making decisions for the future and long term decisions are not always the easiest decisions to make, but definitely ones which are going to, set us in the right direction for building something which is of value and has longevity built into it. Um, my mom was or still is, I suppose, a complete perfectionist. She's always like, wants to really, really perfect things and, go into overdrive and perfecting things. And I suppose that speaks to one of the other foundational values in the business, which is excellence. And we've got to build a culture of excellence within the business. And, I think in life in generally, like giving your absolute best, showing intention, showing up with full commitment and giving your absolute best, I suppose, speaks to excellence. And that's something which we've also really focused on within the business, is trying to be the best that we possibly can and continuously applying sort of a beginner's mindset, one which is willing to learn, one which is willing to improve and continuously driving to better ourselves as a company, as the products, the people, and all of those sort of things. And and yeah, so those are some of the things which were ingrained in me from my childhood, which then as I went through schooling and started doing more creative, realizing that I had this creative talent to engage in that, and then combining the creativity with this entrepreneurial culture within my family. I found myself dabbling in different creative ventures, of which some progressed and some fell away, as they generally do as in an entrepreneurial journeys. And one thing led to another. My first sort of main venture was in product design. After studying industrial design at CPUT in Cape Town, I I started. We were actually, it was our final year project in my fourth year of studies. We had to a brief where you had to design a product or range of products, and the objective was to make a 5,000 rand profit. Which, now I reflect back, I'm like, okay, 5,000 rand profit, that would have been quite an easy thing to do if you just had to design a product and sell it, and you didn't really have too many overheads and that sort of stuff then. But ultimately, what it did is I built a range of products and launched it into market, and it worked. And that became my first business. I continued after university, continued to develop and design these products and sell them. And I formed something called Jasper Eales Original. And Jasper Eales Original was a product design brand, and which I continued to run even when Sealand had launched. I was still running it, and then I got to a point where I realized actually to focus all my energy and time into one thing. That's when I kind of put it put it put it to the side for the time being. But so Jasper's Original was focused on building high quality products which were designed to last, keeping considering materials which were better for the planet, things which weren't necessarily cutting corners in order to achieve the most competitive price, but rather saying how to build the best product possible to last, and also looking into categories which are a bit more bespoke, but there were things that I felt that I needed in my life that I couldn't find. And so very purpose driven, function driven, but always considering the importance of aesthetic, because I want to have beautiful things around me, but they need to be function first. And through that, I mean, I learned various things in design and in business. And what happened in that business was I started having quite a lot of offcuts and waste materials in the furniture and the product that I was building. And I one day just decided, I don't know, I can't remember what inspired me to do it, but I just picked up some of these offcuts and I started putting them together in interesting ways and made this little sculpture, little character. At this point in time, I was selling my products. I had a stall at a market. I think it was the Hout Bay Market, Hout Bay Harbour Market. And so I made a few of these little characters, which I called robots, play on like raw materials and robots because they look like robots. There's one of them actually is looking at me right now. And These guys over here were basically called robots, and they were made from like, here's an offcut from maybe like a piece of wooden leg and some nails and, a piece of driftwood from the beach. Anyways, so I then put these few models onto my stall at the market, and they all sold straight away. And then I was like, hold on, I've just made these from all my waste material, not necessarily like looking for the most durable, sustainable material, but rather saying, well, these just offcuts and waste, which generally you see waste is something you sweep up at the end of the day and throw it to the dustbin. But now I've creatively looked at a solution for this waste, put it together, revalued it and sold it. And they've sold out in the first day. There's something here. So I continued to develop and make more and more robots. And over, I think, a span of like 2 or 3 years, I made all kinds of sizes and shapes, robots from human size to tiny little ones, and sent them all around the world. And they became like one of my most successful items within my range at Jasper's Original. And as the point of that story was that it showed me this value in waste material, which, as I said, is previously seen as something which you throw away and it's got no value to it. And all of a sudden, through just creative problem solving, there's like this new value to waste material, where I got to the point where I was going on the weekends to scrap yards and finding all kinds of interesting pieces of metal scraps and springs and factories which did metal production, and collecting all of their waste materials, integrating that into the design of these products, from eyes to like springs in their hair to, it just was like, I just I identified waste in a very different way. Um, then what happened was I was selling these products. Then I progressed. I went and had stores at different markets. I was at the biscuit mill, and I was next to a brand which was selling leather bags. And I would just notice every day, like on a Saturday morning, they would come there. I would come with all my bespoke little characters and designs that I was making, and they would come with these boxes filled with leather bags. It's like so much stock, and by the end of the day, it was all sold out. And I was selling some robots, I was selling some laptop stands, I was selling like beach bats and things. I was having fun and these cool products. But what I really saw was like that these bags were selling at an incredible rate. So there was like there was almost like more of a commercial value to it. But at the same time, I didn't necessarily identify with the aesthetic of those products. And that's where this idea of, well, how does one combine this principle of revaluing waste into a more commercially desirable or needed product, like bags and clothing, the things that you need on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to like a bespoke piece of art or things that you don't necessarily need on a daily basis. Unless, yeah. And then I suppose fast forward a little bit of time, I then was consulting on to another local brand which was making bags out of yacht sails, old yacht sails. And these guys had asked me to consult on doing a display unit for their brand, and how they could merchandise their bags in an interesting way and showcase the function of the product and store the product. So it's just an interesting design brief to showcase these upcycled yacht sail bags in a good way. And through that project, the individual who was running that brand at the time, whose name was Mike Schlebach, and we connected really well. And we kind of had this at that point in time. He was there was challenges within the business, and long story short, he needed to close that entity down, but he had production facility that was making bags. I had been trading and selling my robots and characters. We had identified this opportunity with waste material, people selling bags, and the way and the rate in which they were selling them. And then I saw what Mike was doing, and I thought what he was doing was awesome, was super cool. But at the same time, I saw new ways of branding, new material introductions, and just like could re-envision what he was doing in a different way.
So is that origin story of really sharing like the core philosophy of like upcycling these materials to create bags? I think that was like you got the insight from the leather, had the motivation to do so as well. But then what he had is like he brought the facility, you brought the creative, and I guess I'm spoiler alert, Sealand is born.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly how Sealand was born. He needed to close down the entity he was doing, but he had people employed and he had machinery. We collectively had this new idea of bringing and integrating a variety of different waste materials, not just a yacht sail combined with other virgin materials, but saying, well, what are all the other virgin materials which are going into this product? How can we replace them with waste materials, upcycle new materials? And how can we reposition this product into something which is not specific to a nautical sailing community, but rather to a broader community of people who commute and require luggage and require fun, playful, yet quality product. Also tapping into a movement, back in 2015, which was not very known at least in Cape Town or South Africa, about upcycling. It was certainly happening in places like Europe. And, timing in business is such an important factor, which we can talk about later in terms of, elements which make business, important to business success. But our timing, we're quite early to market, but what it's done is we weren't too early, and it's allowed us to now position ourselves, 10 years down the line as a leader in that space. And
Well, you brought up the point of timing. Talk to me about it, right? So instead of bringing it up later, would like talk to me about the relevance of it now.
yeah, so I mean, back in, I suppose I may still be naive in many things, but one of the naiveties I had when starting the business was thinking like, how quickly one could make success of a business, and, what is the actual requirements in order to succeed. And back then I thought,
Every entrepreneur
3 to 5 years. Yeah, exactly. 3 to 5 years and we're going to be styling. I just need some money and then we'll be good. But you realize that the longer we do things, that it's not just, if you got a great idea, it's not that hard to find the money. More importantly is, where does the money come from and who's giving it to you and what are their expectations? But over and above, and more importantly to the money, is, your team, the people you have, the culture, and the way that you truly, just the people you have working within your organization. If you have great people, you can have a great business. If you've got not great people, your business is going to struggle. And you can't have some great and some not great, because the ungreat people, the weak people, are going to pull the rest down. And yes, you've done a lot of development and training and skills and those kind of things, and that's fantastic. But the general idea and the general principle is, you've got to be driven, motivated, and have initiative in terms of what one's looking for. And when we hire at Sealand, it's an element of personality and performance. And you can't just be an expert in what you're doing, but have no personality or have the wrong personality. It's more so that you can have an incredible personality and you can be pretty good at what you do. Like, the personality is such an important part of the people component. But when we look at Sealand, and in terms of talent and new talent, is very much this element of personality and performance, which is considered. And so that speaks to the importance of people.
Sorry, before we continue, this is a tangent, but I love it, because now I want to go practically in how you do it. Because I mean, like, you're beyond 100 people now in terms of like the size of the business. So you've clearly gotten this right, and I think a lot of founders, no one needs to be convinced of the importance of having as many A players in your business as possible, right? But I think the point of outside of our intuition of who we can pick, which can sometimes be wrong when it comes to hiring, how have you managed to really structure and systematize approach towards hiring to ensure that you're getting those A players? I mean, you mentioned personality, performance,
Yeah.
but
Well,
like,
it takes time.
I,
It certainly took time. We didn't start off with ability to hire A players. We tried our best, but that, only in the last few years we've gotten to a point where we've actually been able to afford to hire experienced people which have skills within the area in which we're hiring for. The personality component hasn't been a challenge, but in the beginning we had to hire good generalists, and ideally try find young people who believed in what we were doing, and they wanted to be there for this potential of what it's going to become. Um, and that's fantastic. But the more you realize, the more that we continue, the realization of experienced people really makes it makes the journey not easier, but you certainly are shortening the time frame in which you're succeeding at what you're doing because they've got the experience, they've done it before, they know the systems, they know how things are done, as opposed to somebody who has the initiative and the personality, but they're figuring it out. And it's good to have a combination of both, but the experience is critical. And something that my business partner has shown me now is when sometimes we're hiring new people and the cost is something which I'm not used to paying when it comes to experienced people. You always make it back when you've got the right people. They pay for themselves and more over and over. And we really are finding the value in investing into good people. What it just does, it professionalizes the team, the work ethic, the culture, the performance. Everything is improved and so much better. And it's certainly something which, as our journey has continued, and I haven't been involved in big businesses, and not to see it as a big business, but it's a growing business. And for me, it's my first time growing and being involved in a business of this scale. But I'm truly seeing the value in people as one of the most important components in um, building a successful brand and business. Is highly, highly important, choosing the right people. You've got to look for A players, but that A player in Sealand mind is an element of their personality and the individual they are. So we look for a Sealander at heart, plus somebody who comes with experience and somebody who's knowledgeable in what they're doing.
Yeah. Now, I've mentioned this before. Is like I like to think of the talent equation as talent is equal to competence multiplied by commitment multiplied by contribution. So competence is how well you can do the job. Commitment is how committed you are to this organization, its goals, and its philosophy. And contribution is how much of a contribution do I feel like my job makes to a community or a cause that I care about. Right. And so when you're talking about the Sealanders, it's very much like, are you going to feel that sense of contribution and commitment to what it is that we're doing? And then the competence side of things is like how well you can do the job. And
Yeah, the commitment component is massive in terms of in what Sealand stands for. And as an entity, it stands for doing good and, business for good, where we support organizations which are doing fantastic work into community and ocean preservation and building product which is responsible and sustainably material sourced, produced and high quality. Like, we certainly attract a different wave and an incredible talent pool who wants to be a part of an organization that is doing business that way. And I think that more and more, the way that the world is moving, we're seeing more and more people interested in working in that type of business. And therefore, their contribution is beyond just a paycheck at the end of the month. It's something which they believe in and they're passionate in. And if you believe and you're passionate about what you do, in some ways, it's like it goes beyond work. Then, like, are you working or are you just doing what you absolutely love doing? And if you're doing what you absolutely love doing, you'll give so much more, and you'll just do a far superior job at it. So we always try to look at it like that.
100%. Yeah, I think the simplicity of it for me is getting someone to care and making sure that they're in the right environments and that they care and they feel cared for is very much that. But I think before we go down a talent rabbit hole, the simplicity of what it is that you've also said, also really like, where is that as long as they're a right fit for the business and a right fit for the role, you get what you pay for, right? And like that's a different element of scale in terms of the fact that like hiring the right people and really paying top dollar gets you good quality, because it really is you know an A player when you work with them and you see them, and it changes the game. And I imagine it's changed the game for you.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, my first time in growing a business and growing a brand. Jasper Eales original was a sole prop. It was just me. So I was only as good as I was, and I was only earning when I was working. Whereas now, this idea of building a brand, which is we're about 100 people strong now internally, and then we have outsourced partners. We've got production lines dedicated to us with probably another 30, 40 people, and the realization of good people is absolutely critical.
Couldn't agree more. So Jasper, now to pull back off the tangent and get back into the meat of the story. So Sealand's formed with you and Mike, at least like the original product, the facility, the main capabilities of the business are there. You've got a good kind of consumer profile in terms of and persona around who is that you want to go after. What happens next, man? Talk to me about the kind of first couple experiences of growth and getting the business off the ground.
So we're selling our product now at the biscuit mill. And that's at the end of 2015. We got this small range of products, which people are sort of stopping by the whole time, completely intrigued in. They're continuously saying, "Why is it so expensive? And it's made from waste material. Shouldn't it be cheap?" We therefore realize, like, okay, before we can market what the products are doing, we need to market the story behind and why of what we're doing. And so we realized there's a whole educational component to selling our product before we could just market our product. And even today, we still focus on the educational component of what we do. And we built this notion of, being an aspirational brand of educational voice. And it's been such an important part of how we show up and how we present ourselves. Because if you're aspirational, we're able to reach more people, but then we have this educational component. It's not, we're not trying to beat down like an academic message, but subconsciously, everything we're positioning and the way we're doing things is, an element of, oh, you can do this from waste, or this is how we treat, this is how people are looked after. And there's always this educational message underlying in what we're doing.
So actually, I want to double click on that. Talk to me about the educational piece, because like I said, from the understanding, I had the same thought of like, surely it's a no-brainer. If you can change waste material, upcycle it into new material, again, in apparel, at least in terms of fabric, like surely it's cheaper, surely it's a better way to do it, and it's like less wasteful. Like I realized that was quite actually naive of me. It's a lot more expensive. It's a lot more effortful to go about doing this. So like, talk to me about this education that you've had to go in the market and the customers to like say, okay, cool, I realize the value and the price point of this. Because a lot of people listening to this often feel like, if they're creating something new in their market, I'm one of them, right? There's this education of market that needs to happen. So how did you go about that? I'd like to pause here for a moment to talk about why it is that we run the Founder Files in the first place, why we've done over 100 episodes, and why we have no intention of stopping anytime soon, and how it is that we go about actually funding this so consistently. And to start off with, the purpose of the Founder Files is to give established entrepreneurs practical stories and insights from people that have been there before, so you can avoid years of trial and error in scaling your own business. And the reason why this is so important to us is it relates very directly to what the purpose of Metavolve is, which is the entity that funds the Founder Files in the first place. And that is to accelerate the time it takes for entrepreneurs to build businesses that are able to thrive without them. Practically, what that looks like is our mission statement, to ensure that as many founders as possible can take a holiday where they actually switch off whilst their business keeps growing. And the reason why this mission is so important to us is because as many entrepreneurs, we built these businesses to potentially work less, right? Have a sense of freedom. But we found ourselves working harder than ever. And we thought when we conquered these original problems around survivability and getting to product market fit, we then achieved growth. And then the nature of the problems that we have now fundamentally changed. And we found ourselves working harder than ever, right? We're working longer hours, we're making harder decisions, people are coming to us, we're having to put out fires, and it can feel so intense, and we're constantly getting pulled back into operations because of the fundamental reason that no one knows our business like we do. And this is where Metavolve comes in. We use strategy as the process to really download all of your knowledge, all your thinking about your business, about your market, about your product into your management team so that they can be empowered to execute while you focus on growth or frankly doing what it is that you want with your time. So if you want to hear more about what Metavolve does and how Metavolve can help you attain a new level of freedom in your scale up, then click on the link in the description below and let's have a chat and a curiosity call to see how I can share some of the insights I've learned from working with and interviewing over 200 business owners in the past 3 and a bit years. But that's it from me for now. Let's get back to the episode.
I didn't study marketing, and neither did Mike study marketing. I think what we were very aligned on was telling a genuine story and doing it in a way where we wanted to have an impact, a positive impact on people. And we were just two surfers who loved the ocean, we loved the outdoors. We wanted to make a difference in terms of trying to clean up these natural playgrounds we absolutely loved, and also employ people, because there was was and still is an unemployment issue within Cape Town and South Africa. That was kind of like the basis of, the why. Then it was about actioning it and doing it and realizing that it's a shitload harder and more difficult to do than what we thought it was going to be, and it's going to take a lot longer. But while, we'd committed to doing it, it was then, continuously telling this journey of what we were doing and being very transparent in every step of the way. And ultimately, sharing that transparency in what we were doing became this this background educational message of, well, this is an old seatbelt, which was used to reinforce a 1-ton sugar bag. We've now got X amount of tons of this material. It needs to be processed because you can't just take it in the form in which we received it. And I found it on the side of the street one day, like, we can't just use that straight in the bags. We have to employ a few people to process it. So there's now this constant processing, which normally if you just go to the shop and buy webbing, it's on the roll. You don't have to do any processing. You're just cutting it to the length you need. So there's all these extra processes in upcycling, which kind of, if you just look at it quickly from the outside, you see it, and you're like, oh, well, why is it more expensive? The why is because there's all these extra operational exercises which generally require human intervention in order to operate and to do. And there's so many inconsistencies in it, and therefore every time it's different. So it's very difficult to optimize production lines. And then to sell it, everyone's different again. And therefore everyone requires its own unique story to be told. Um, so
It's a lot of effort.
taking all of those, it's a lot of effort, but it's beautiful and is very sustainable. And so not how do you do it? How do you market that? And our way of marketing it was just telling a genuine, authentic, and transparent story of all the steps along the way. And that just became this process, which for us was an educational component. And then we found ourselves talking at universities and talking in companies and educating people around the way in which we decided to build the business which we're building. And it's both the business model in which we're operating off, which is no stock standard business model. There's no like guided steps in order to, this is how you need to run a sustainable business. Yes, there's goals and there's measures in place, but we were building a business which was unique. We were building a business which we believed in, one which we felt was future proof. And that just influenced the way we made decisions. And it was because of how it was because of what we believed in and the way that we operated and the things which were important to us.
So I'm imagining the transparency that you shared on that journey, and not just the storytelling. So it's not like you actually necessarily turned the product into a character, for example, but like you actually just shared the process and the efforts and guys, love and work that went into this. And naturally what that does is, besides the high price point of purchasing this, there's, people have a tendency to value something that they created more than something that they bought. And by taking someone along that story of realizing the effort that went into creating this, that's going to increase the value that someone holds of this product, because they now have an appreciation of what went into creating this, instead of just something that's at a high price point. So like what I'm imagining is that's kind of what happened, is the fact that you had these consumers, you had your customers coming and understanding the effort and care and journey that we went through in order to produce this. And they can imagine everything from every piece and item that you came and upcycled, where that was originally, to create this amazing story of what this product is, that now I hold more value in because I have an appreciation for that.
Yeah, I mean, you spot on in saying that, and it's not like we strategized. Oh, that's how we need to position. That's what we need to do. I think it just came naturally for us to tell the story, the journey, and showcase the people who make the product. Like, I didn't want to be. I'm not the hero. It's we collectively as a team. We all play such important roles in making the final product, and therefore we would share the journey of how the product was, where it came from, who cut materials, how we sorted them, then show the journey of how the bag gets stitched together, and very much told the story of the people who make the product as the heroes of the brand. And still today, we've got this inside every single bag. We've got what's known as the name in the bag, and that has evolved over time. Right now, in the form in which it's a little more interactive. So it's got a QR code and will say this bag is made in Cape Town by, and then there's the QR code, and they'll say their name, and then there's a QR code, and you can scan that, and it'll take you to our website, and you can read up about all the different people who make our products and see the different
That's really
factories
cool.
where we produce our products. Again, it goes down into the transparency, and we continuously working on further transparency. Something which we're hoping to launch this year is a digital product passport, and what that is something which basically shows the whole value chain and full transparency on your materials and where they've come from, and shows a lot more. It basically just puts a lot more information in the customer's hand to understand what the materials, where the material came from, who made the product, all of those sort of things, which actually we want people to make more responsible decisions. But most of the time, we don't give them very much information to empower themselves to make that decision. There's a lot of like high level marketing, which a lot of the times actually greenwashing. Whereas what we're getting to this point of where we're going to have a full transparency is here's the open book, like, and you can make your decision then and give the customer the ability to make more educated decision on the product they purchase.
Yeah, so I mean, on that, I was skipping ahead a bit, but this is also a point of what I underestimated is like obviously how complicated supply chains are, but how little transparency there is in most of them. And that like this ethos that you had right from the beginning of sharing the story, who's the person that made that is like, that's what you're doing now. But I think the scale, it talks to me about the scale that you're at now. And it's like, because I know that there's certifications that you get and certain standards that are met around like supply chain transparency that are actually quite difficult to get, but they, once you have them in terms of like ESG reporting and all of that, they unlock a lot more for, you know, a really mature business. What are you kind of grappling with that now in terms of like transparency, kind of sustainability reporting, etc.?
Yeah, so we're about to release our fourth responsibility report, and something which, again, for our size of business, is not that common to be reporting on, but the business and the nature of who we are, it's very important. So every year for the last this will be our fourth year releasing this document, and something we're very proud of. It's something which, you know, showcases and exposes who we are and what we've been doing, where we've lost, where we've won, in a very open and transparent way. Going back to, you know, supply chain and certifications, we started off our business where we didn't have educated sustainability heads of departments, and it was me and the team making decisions around, well, what is right and what's wrong. And fundamentally, I know what is responsible and what's not responsible, what materials are good and what materials are bad. And so we made a lot of these decisions based on what we believed were right for people and for planet. But as the business has grown, and we're looking at global certifications, you can't go and say to them, well, you know, trust me, like hand on heart, I've made a good decision. I promise you it's a good one. Like, it doesn't work like that. You need legitimate certification. And so that's been quite a significant shift in terms of how we operate and like, you know, who we can work with and who we can't work with. And in some ways, you know, there aren't factories in South Africa who can produce what we want that have a certain, you know, legitimate certification. But what we can do and what we have been doing is we've been influencing these factories and partners of ours to make progressive steps to become more sustainable in the way they work, and, you know, build products and systems which then allow them in order to get the certifications that they require, which then allows us to get a far superior product, and which then has also led us to look outside of South Africa for certain manufacturing, which um, is something that for many years we just focused on South Africa. But then we also found ourselves limiting ourselves to certain types of hardware, certain types of material, and it was stagnating the progressiveness of what we could produce. Then we started importing certain materials into South Africa and continuing to fabricate in South Africa. And and then on this journey, which we've been on for many years to get a global certification and is a B Corp certification, and we needed to be working with more facilities and partners that had recognized global certifications. And when was it? 2000, I think 2022. We needed to develop, and we wanted to develop internally, but we also had an external client requiring the development of a duffel bag with wheels. And we looked locally to try and produce it, but the realization was that we weren't going to be able to develop product in terms of the quality that we believed was right. And this is where we took our first step into looking at international production. And we found a facility in Jakarta, in Indonesia, who had incredible sustainability certifications as well as amazing technical capabilities within premium bag construction. And and as a creative, for me, and it's been just an incredible eye-opening experience to what is possible when it comes to bag construction. And because we've always been quite limited to what's possible within our own internal production and within South African production capabilities within bags has been limited. And whereas working with this facility in Jakarta, we can design like endlessly cool things and have access to phenomenal range of sustainable materials, from zips to hardware to webbing to like everything is it's just incredible what one can achieve there. And and that's been a very interesting process, but also an enlightening process, but also one which has been important for our business and for the progression of our business. Today, we produce 91% of our bags in South Africa, and about 9% of them are produced in Jakarta and in this factory, which is a blue sign certified factory. They've got a variety of different certifications. And
So just on that, what's the importance of the certification? So for someone who's like obviously in the scaling journey and like looking at this now, why is certification so important at this new scale?
I'm not hugely technical. I'm not technically clued up when it comes to all the different types of certifications. I leave those technicalities to our sustainability head. The importance of certifications, I suppose, is general recognition and credibility. And, for us, getting B Corp certification is a global stamp to say that you as a business operate with people and planets in mind on a very high level. And by having
Okay.
it, a lot of people in South Africa won't know what a B Corp certification stamp means. But for us in the world in which we operate in, it's a huge, huge stamp of approval to say that people can't doubt what we do. This stamp gives us the credibility to say what we are doing is legitimate, and and it basically just gives us the credibility to say that what we're doing is correct and that we're on the right journey around building a responsible business. And
It's also just walking the talk, right? It's like you've got the sustainability narrative, and it's to what you said earlier. It's like, trust me, bro, we're sustainable, I promise. Versus now, it's like here's the stamp. Like, trust me, I'm not bullshitting you. Like, we really are.
yeah, and what we've learned also in this journey, especially with B Corp, which we happened to receive about 2 weeks ago after maybe
Ah, congrats.
6 years of working towards it. We finally got it about 2 weeks ago.
That's huge,
And
man. Well done.
thank you. What it's been also in this journey, initially it was about getting the certification to say here, like it's got the credibility of it. But in actual fact, I think through the whole journey, what it's really taught us is it's more about looking internally, and it's a process which has encouraged us to become more responsible, to look internally more, looking at, well, this is what we thought we needed to do, and actually there's a whole bunch of other areas which we can improve in and a whole bunch of other things that we can do. And so it's been a very interesting learning experience, and it just builds this roadmap of what one needs to focus on in order to achieve the certification. But it's not now that you got the certification, okay, now you stop. You continuously want to look at all the other things in which you can better and improve within your business.
It's also maintaining that, right? And I think the cool thing that it's built both culturally and like as a habit and strategic intention and leadership is that we really stand by being a really responsible business, right? And so that feeds into every decision that you make and how it is that you run your company. So I think the sign of you saying, again, even a business of your size, this isn't very common. It already shows and stands for, it's like, this is so fundamental to what our philosophy is, our culture, our values, that this is who we are and this is how we're going to be going forward. And everything that we do is going to be orientated around being a responsible, sustainable company.
And again, for at Sealand and the way that we operate, it's not about like box checking. It's more about that's just how we behave. That's who we are. It's ingrained from day one, or actually, it was ingrained long before day one. It's been a part of my life since I was a kid, and it's not like I'm going to change. That's who I am. I'm teaching my kids the same principles, and no doubt they will, when they do whatever they do, they're going to be focused and making those kind of thinking along those lines as well. And so again, for us, it's just that's the way that we operate. That's just normal. It's not strategically we need to be a more sustainable business. That's how our business is, just naturally.
100%. But I think also like the natural consequence of going after a certification that takes you 6 years to be able to attain means that I can imagine there was so much that you would have learned, right? It's like there's so much that you are authentically doing, like just again, behaviorally, like this is what we care about, this is what we think. But there's just so much you probably learned around your own operations, manufacturing, supply chain, about how to take that to another level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, man. So one thing I want to just again tap into, because you brought it up slightly and obviously it caught my attention before we get back into the chronological part of the story. You mentioned your clients wanted duffel bags with wheels. Now, obviously, where we're at in the journey is talking D2C, right? Now, I'm assuming there's a retailer, distributor involved who wants a different kind of product line. Talk to me about that kind of shift of like D2C and like where your majority client base is now.
Yeah, so we've gone full circle. We started as a direct-to-consumer business model, and where we had a few of our small little outlets and online. And then we did some wholesale. So we serviced a few local retail stores, which were important to our business at that point in time because we only had so much reach as a small little new brand. And then there were some big retail outlets that had well-located stores and good audiences, and they were buying from us, which we thought was good. And then we realized, hey, this market in South Africa at that point in time is, we thought majority just tourists, and the locals weren't buying into the brand that we had not had hope, but we just assumed that the international tourists coming to Cape Town was our main clientele. We were positioned in the waterfront, and there's a lot of tourists there. We thought our product was maybe too high price for the local. And so we needed to take our brand to Europe. This was, and more and more we spoke to people, they told us about this particular trade show that we needed to show up in Europe. And it was called ISPO. It's like one of the world's biggest outdoor shows based in Munich. And we raised some funds and we went over and did this trade show expecting to collect lots of orders and to sell and start distributing into wholesale into Europe. Sadly, this was our first real school fees we paid. We didn't get any orders, and it didn't work out for us at all. We didn't get any orders. No.
Yeah.
We realized
that's
that
heartbreaking.
One trade shows were not necessarily what they used to be made out to be. And it was more, this show happened to be more people who had existing clients. There was more sort of a meet and greet and show them new ranges, less of us finding new clientele. We also invested all of our cash into making a booth and setting up our stand, getting stock over there, and no marketing in saying, well, who do we want to target? And it wasn't focused in, okay, these are our accounts we want to target, and let's invite the buyers from them to come visit us. So obviously lots of lessons learned. We came back with our tail.
Put the product there and the customers will come, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that can happen, but it didn't happen for us. And what happened thereafter was, it was just, I suppose, a lucky coincidence, but a gentleman from the UK who did a different type of trade show. It's called a showroom. It's a lot more focused. And the way that worked was he represented a collection of brands, and he had a network of retail stores which he knew these brands feel to, and he then creates over strategic times of the year when all brands create or different agencies showcase their brands through these showrooms, and then invite the buyers to see collections of the brands. They then place orders, so it's kind of like a pre-order model, and then the brands will produce and send over to these accounts. And this guy got a hold of us and he asked us, invited us to be a part of his showroom. It was a lot more affordable because we weren't financing the whole booth. We just had to get our products over, and then he would take a cut of the product orders which he got. And this model worked for us. He's in the first showroom, we picked up an incredible account, which is Selfridges in the UK. And for us, that was like, we caught a whale, and you catch a whale, then a lot more, the fishes come following after. So, and we've got a wholesale account with Selfridges, and once you had Selfridges, then we picked up another account, multiple other accounts from Liberty London to Mr. Porter, and so on. And this momentum grew, and over a few years, we then had a really nice, what looked like a really nice portfolio of brand retail outlets, primarily in Europe, mainly in the UK, but distributed a bit over Europe, and then into North America and Canada. And we were doing almost about 50% of our business was international wholesale, selling product overseas, which, great, earning dollars, making to order. But in actual fact, it wasn't as great as it looked from and sounded from the outside. And this was a realization we came to, whereby payment terms were long payment terms, diluted margin. At that point in time, we were still producing products in a way which was very difficult to scale. So there was only a limited amount of product that we could produce, which meant that these guys on wholesale were paying us on terms which were bad for us, on a diluted margin, and they were demanding quite large quantities of product, and which meant that we were then finding our own physical retail stores in South Africa without the kind of stock levels that they needed. And so a combination of things led to the realization that, for one, is there's actually a bigger market in South Africa, which than we initially thought. And two is you need to get your house in order before you start to do other things. And our house in order was saying, well, we've got this market in South Africa. Let's get that right first before you start getting distracted about international. And there's a whole accumulation of things which came to the point to say, you know what, we need to focus on building a direct to consumer model where we're in complete control. Because not only in selling our product, we're selling a story. And when you're selling our type of product and story in another store on the other side of the world, it's very difficult to get the salesperson who's selling 50 other different brands in that store to tell your story as truly and as authentically as that we can. So a number of reasons. It was around 2021, just after, after the global pandemic, is when we then realized we're going to take a huge risk, say goodbye to a huge part of our overall revenue, and focus on bringing the brand back to South Africa and focusing on building a direct consumer model in South Africa. Look at opening more of our own physical retail stores, look at truly investing and championing in online. And yes, we will still have a model where we can service businesses, but not on a wholesale basis. And this is where the understanding of bigger businesses generally do internal and external stakeholder gifting, whether it's, yeah, and a lot of the time gifting on that level was done just because there was this feeling, this need to do a gift, and not a huge consideration into sourcing a high quality or purpose driven gift. And this is something which, again, we really honed in on, focused over COVID, and where our physical retail stores were closed, but corporates were still needing to do key stakeholder gifting.
You also go into PPE, yeah?
We did. We realized that was first, quickest way we were going to be able to open up our factory again in order to keep our staff employed and keep them busy. So we applied for a permit in order to make face masks, and we developed a few different styles of face masks. And quite quickly, our face masks became one of the more popular face masks, reusable face masks on the market. And it's crazy to think back to that time where face masks were a thing, but we made thousands of face masks. And that also gave us this realization that we're more than a bag brand. People trust our brand for what it stands for, the ethos of what we stand for, and making products which are done in a responsible way, using the right materials, treating people correctly and fairly, and making functional yet aesthetically pleasing, sustainable gear. So that kind of led us to the realization we can do more than just bags.
So just on that is like, I think the unintended consequence of that is it's like you've got like some of the most valuable advertising real estate, which is someone's face, right, during COVID, in terms of the fact that you've got your brand now everywhere, right? You were just a bag brand, you're selling thousands of these now, right? Obviously your brand now becomes quite recognized. And I think like just me piecing the story together, obviously there's no foresight to this, right? You're not going to be like, okay, cool, yeah, we're going to advertise our brand and do that. It's just like, we're doing this because we need the business to keep running and we need to keep our people employed. But suddenly, like, the masks take off, everyone starts recognizing this brand. And then the moment that you start opening up your production lines properly, now I imagine that that also helps with the circumstance of really focusing on more D2C, because not only was there a realization of markets, you've also kind of put fuel into this market fire, because now your brand's out there and there's a lot more interesting curiosity for people to explore what it is that Sealand's about.
Yeah, it really did open our eyes to being able to do more, to think more product based, to realize that we have this value within our brand, and the intrinsics of that allows us to make more products. It's also dangerous because one needs to stay focused. If I were to develop all the products that I get told every day that is the next best thing that Sealand needs to make, we would make absolutely everything. And
makes
but
absolutely
also
no
what
money in the
was
process.
and another thing though, what COVID did is that we really combined a few elements together. One is, understanding the face mask, but prior to the face mask was saying, well, how do we how do we survive through COVID, a time where retail's closed? And this is one of the big realizations which led to the confidence to stop international wholesale. Was we ran a campaign which was called the 51 campaign, and as a brand, we had never really done any discounting prior to this point. And what we did is we built this very emotive but very true and authentic message around, we need your support now. And if you give us your support now in purchasing a product while our factory is closed at a 51% discount, there's your incentive. Then, as soon as we are allowed to reopen our factory, we're going to have a nice amount of orders to keep ourselves busy and to keep our business alive. But you're purchasing the product upfront, which means we're getting the cash now, which allows us to keep our staff. We're able to continue to retain all of our staff and continue to pay all of our staff. And what it did was then allow us to, when we go back into the factory, have a nice pipeline of work to keep ourselves busy with.
Why 51?
It's just the interesting number. And because it gets people like you to ask the question, why 51? I mean, you start talking about it. And because if it was just 50, then, that's common.
Yeah, there's got to be a deliberate choice behind the 51.
Exactly. And
that's a funny thing. That is the whole strategy. It's like, just because of this, you're going to talk about it.
What it really showed is this like overwhelming support from a local community of people from South Africa who backed our brand and wanted to see us survive. And that gave us the confidence to be able to turn away all of our international wholesale to focus on building this business in South Africa. And very, very grateful still today for that, and the confidence that our customers at that point in time installed in us and what we could do. And then, super grateful because it allowed us to keep every single one of our staff employed through a time where a lot of people were retrenched and laid off.
So give me a sense of where you're at from a scale perspective, beginning of 2021 versus now, obviously 4 years later, 2025, because I know you've scaled a lot since then.
Our production team at that point in time was relatively the same size as to what it is today. But at that point in time, we were doing a lot of the majority of our production internally. From that point until now, where our scales come is in an affiliation and partnership with outsourced manufacturing partners. And that's where our capacity scale has come from. And building relationships with the best quality facilities in South Africa in order to produce our gear for us. And that hasn't been an easy task because they don't necessarily exist, at least in bags, but we've identified facilities that work for similar materials, which therefore dictates the correct type of machinery. And then we've worked with them in the development and training in how to produce our products, which has been an awesome process because what it's done is we've grown these businesses, we've added extra production lines onto them, and I suppose influenced and supported a variety of other businesses in terms of producing more than what they were just producing. So that's been it's been a great process. It's been difficult. We've worked with some factories which hasn't worked out, and we're working with certain factories which we started with from day one, and we've got fantastic relationships there, and again ones which are very open relationships whereby we're working towards similar goals in terms of waste efficiencies and employment and building high quality, high spec products, which is fantastic. So our capacity grew through outsourced production, where the big internal growth has come since that point until now is on a head office level. So on a head office level, we've grown our capacity in the design department. We've now got a full clothing design team and a full bag design team. We've got multiple people that sit in the marketing department, from brand director to digital directors to graphic design. You've then got more of an operational team as well. So, the head office resources have truly grown. Our finance department has grown. So that's where a lot of the internal talent growth has come from. And also, as we spoke earlier, just about the experience of talent and hiring more experienced people within the head office team.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that context. That makes a lot of sense. I think it's also that difference now when it's about like not just getting more people within operations. It's actually around like enhancing like capabilities and strategic capabilities in the business. I'm just also I love to kind of quantify things. I just want to know, and I don't expect you to put you in a corner and the answer off the top of your head. But now, how many SKUs do you have, and how many units do you say you produce a month in total? If you can share that information.
Per month, we produce it all varies on with what you're doing. If you're producing bigger bags or smaller bags, but we're probably producing like a few thousand bags a month.
Sure. Yeah, it's just a lot of volume to handle, and I know that especially when you're in production and manufacturing, like the business that you were 5 years ago versus now, like there's no linear scale when it comes to doing this. It fundamentally changes.
Yeah, we've got our own DC, which has got a whole team of people that operate the logistics there, of product going in, product going out, deliveries from our outsourced partners, deliveries from our factory, as well as then the continuous orders which come in from our retail stores. We've got 7 retail stores now, so making sure that those stores stay stocked. Now you've got our own drivers driving and delivering product all around. That's just for servicing our stores. It's not e-commerce. We ran a project or sale a week ago, and we had thousands of boxes going out online. So it's a completely different business to what it was
a different animal.
4 years ago, 5 years ago. and a very different business to what it was 4 years, 5 years before that.
Yeah, it's still a good. I can imagine the reflection of like when you were there at the old biscuit mill versus now. It's like it's insane what you've been able to achieve.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. And I think sometimes I forget to kind of reflect on that journey and to give myself credit for where we are today. I'm just continue to show up and enjoy what I do. And I still have the same passion and love for what we are doing. And yes, now my office is not sitting on the floor in amongst the sewing machines in a small back end side of Woodstock, but the culture of how we operate, the value system within our business, the why behind the products we develop is still all the same. We're just more professional. Our products are far superior to what they used to be. Our capabilities and capacities are far greater and far higher. We're talking to organizations, and when we talking to other businesses on our corporate gifting level, we're talking to some of the biggest businesses in the country. Um, it's the same but different in terms of where we were to where we are. You know, we still I still see ourselves as the same in terms of the way we operate and the way we think. We've just become smarter and more efficient, but still fully true to the mission of together making our planet better. Um, so, which I think is awesome. I don't, for me, and one of my responsibilities as a co-founder and the creative director of the business is to ensure that we stay true to ourselves. No matter how we grow, I can't allow us to outgrow that authenticity of who we are. And we have to stay true to our foundational values because that's what keeps us relevant. That's why people love who we are. We have to stay transparent. We have to continue to share our stories of how we do things and why we're doing things. And as you become bigger, there are haters out there who are going to specifically try and catch you out. But I think that's just natural, and the nature of as one starts to succeed, there's going to be people out there going to try catch you out. But we know internally that the decisions we make are good decisions. We don't make carefree, irresponsible decisions. You know, we too big of an organization with too much on the line to do things now without really considering, you know, why we're doing it. Um, and as we get bigger, there's more of a responsibility.
Okay, so where we're at in the story now is I really want to kind of unpack the fact you're doing thousands of units a month now, really scaled between 2021 and 2025. I just want to know what's the biggest challenge that you had to really overcome in this business as it evolved so much in the past 4 years?
And so the biggest, I suppose, some of the big hurdles that we've had to overcome with the growth in the business is the material inputs. So, and making sure and ensuring that they stay true to what makes the Sealand product special. And if I were to highlight or kind of zoom in on that, it's the lining of the bag, which is the upcycled advertising banners. And that's something which has kind of gone up and down in its supply, where pre-COVID we had what felt like an endless supply, and therefore we never had a disruption in that supply chain of the advertising banners. So we didn't do anything to sort of like contractually secure it. However, when COVID came about, that supply chain completely stopped, and it really highlighted to us the importance of having more formalized agreements around the supply of that waste material. And it also made us realize that we need to have the supply coming from more than one source, because if the one source stops supplying, then a critical ingredient to the success of a Sealand product is, potentially jeopardized. So that's something which we've spent a lot of time and energy focusing on in the securing of the materials which make up our products, because over time we have refined our products to working with recycled and regenerative fabrics for the outside of the product, whereas keeping the upcycling to the interior of the product. And a recycled fabric is a new material, even though it's not necessarily virgin material input. It is it's it's a new fabric which you can place an order on however many meters and get it. Whereas waste upcycled advertising done it's not as simple an equation. And so there's definitely been challenges in um, consistent supply and building up a supply of it, because without it we can't produce, because we can't produce a bag without the key ingredient to making our product, the Sealand product, which is that internal lining. And other challenges, I think, there's so many challenges, but another challenge is definitely building, managing production and the consistency of production, the quality at which we want the finished product to be. So consistent and quality product coming from a variety of different production facilities, and has definitely had its challenges attached to it. And in terms of, we've had to work closely with these facilities and in getting consistent qualities and finishes to it. Also working with dead stock fabrics where or reject fabrics for their primary application that we use for a bag. Um, Sometimes inconsistent in terms of what the material we think we're getting versus what we get, and then you've committed to purchasing a whole bunch of B grade material for a tent, which is supposedly still good quality for a bag, but then one batch to another batch varies, and the one's actually maybe not very good for a bag, and then the material starts to fall apart, and then you've done a whole production run with that material. Those sort of things happen. They're realities of where we've come from, but they're all lessons which you learn from. And over the past 18 months, we've been developing our own recycled fabric locally, which is a very exciting development and project which we've been working on. And we'll be releasing this fabric in this range in the coming months. And again, they're just these progressive steps to saying, well, in the past, the whole bag was made from upcycled material, which is not necessarily a purpose-built material for a high quality, long lasting bag. Some have been, some have maybe been questionable, but where we're moving towards now is saying, well, like every single part of the bag is completely considered to be the best material input for the best longevity in a product. And so specifically designing a recycled fabric for the bags outside, making sure that the ripstop face is the best type of ripstop that we can be using for a bag, not just not just the available ripstop, which is in a rejected or bead grade form for its primary application. And then we saying, well, it's ripstop, it's durable, therefore it's good for our bag. Now we're saying, well, out of all ripstop canvases, what is the best ripstop for a bag, and working with that. So these all these progressions, which it takes time to get to the point where one is you can motivate and justify to a factory to develop a material for you that be actually big enough and mean and be significant enough for them to invest time and energy and money into developing something specifically for us. And two, doing it in the way that we want it with the material inputs in which we want, because, again, we're quite forward thinking in our approach to what we want. And maybe, the factory that's developing the fabric, their large customers are not asking for recycled material. And if his large customers aren't asking for recycled material, and then there's this small brand saying, hey, trust me, building a material in this way is going to make you a lot of money one day. And it's also just much better for your business. And doing it according to these guidelines, which are guidelines from the EU, who is, the most advanced in terms of certification uh, and regulations within sustainability. If you work towards those guidelines, you're going to be future proofing yourself with the material which is exportable. You're going to start to have more customers asking for a material of this type. They may not be asking for it right now, but we are, and we're we're ahead of the curve in South Africa. So is often having conversations like that with suppliers, manufacturers, to give us a chance and to back us in what we're doing now. And yes, we're not coming with the massive orders, but the change in which we're bringing, the approach which we're bringing to business and the way that they do business is certainly one which we believe is going to put them in a stronger position in years to come. And and people are the most important thing, but people also require a huge amount of time. And more people you have, the more time you spend managing and guiding people. And as I said earlier, one of the most, if not the most important resource in the success of a business. But people also require a lot of time and energy and focus. And if I look at, from when I started the business, I was hugely involved in all the design of all the products, and I was a lot more hands-on in the creative side of the business. And as time went by, I found myself being more and more involved in managing people and involved in, yeah, I suppose working with people than within the design and being creative myself. And fortunately, more recently, I've gotten back into getting more involved in design, being more creative. But a huge part of my day and time requirement is working with people. But again, I'm now working with really great people, which is a world of a difference. People who stimulate me, people who, who bring ideas and things to the table, which are fantastic things. Which, again, like, my objective is to hire people who are clever and better than me. Otherwise, we're not going to. Yeah, you have to have smart people involved in the business.
100%. I think that's it's really this new era of being a leader, right? It's like going from founder entrepreneur to real leadership is the shift and challenge. I want to take a step back though, on the one challenge that you mentioned, because we spoke about the production quite a bit, but just on that source material of the advertising banners, what are you doing because I think the funny thing is it's not something that you would have thought about and foreseen in the past. It's like, oh, there's plenty of this, and it's like, cool, we could do this. Now it's like we're growing at such a rate that we're actually like, this is a big challenge. So what are you doing to address that?
So we've built strategic waste partners now. So we've looked at, who's utilizing the largest
Built or
volume.
bought?
Built.
Okay.
So we've built strategic partnerships with some of the largest retail groups in the country, on the basis that we've identified them as the largest users of this particular material. And their usage of this material is not long lived, because they use the material to talk about a new campaign, a new product, and that product has its time on the wall, and then a new product has its time to showcase and tell its story. And so what we've done is we've strategically looked at who's utilizing a lot of this banner material and how can we add value to their business. And the value we add to them is saying, well, we'll take this material off your hands. We're not going to charge you for it. And we're going to build new value into it through the stimulation of local business, obviously stimulating local economy, and build new value product, which is designed to last a long time through the repurposing of some of your waste material.
So great for their sustainability and their ESG reporting as well.
Absolutely. So, not only do we take it off their hands, we also give them reporting as to, what it's done for their carbon output. And so we can give them certain credibility, certain reporting, certain data. And at the same time, we get a material which is critical for the success of our product. And so it's a win-win.
So on the topic of win-win, I mean, like the fact that you're using these advertising banners, is it not, because I actually, forgive me, I'm not actually a customer of yours yet. But when if you open the bag, do you actually see their branding on the?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll just grab a bag I have here as an example. So the outside of this bag is uniform in terms of a recycled nylon, high quality, very durable and consistent. So every time it's going to look the same on the outside. However, when you look inside the bag, that's where it's going to differ every single time. So that over there is something from an advertising banner. Well, it looks like, there's the heel of a shoe. And because it's very abstract, every single time there's some laces. Like
Got you.
an advertising banner is generally on a very large scale. The panel of a bag is far smaller. So then you get these abstract snippets from an advertising banner, which is generally very difficult to identify what it was on the big scale. It becomes more of like a colorful abstract component which goes into the bag. And we don't just work with any type of advertising banners. It's a particular type of material that we work with, of which is generally found in most airports and most retail stores. And that has a very nice handle, tactile for the lining of a bag, but it's very durable. And it works well with the machining from cutting and sewing. So it has all the right properties, be purpose driven for the internal lining of a bag. And then we've also in the past realized that certain advertising banners don't work. And, the outdoor advertising banners, it's more of a PVC based fabric with the internal woven nylon. As those fabrics then more and more tends the outside coating cracks. And then you have this woven interior which starts to come out and it starts to deteriorate. So yes, we can make bags from it, but the bags aren't going to last the test of time in order to our warranties which we offer. So we then have a much more strict process as to what waste materials we work with. There's no point in taking waste, making a product and it becomes waste again in a short space of time. And yeah, I think, some people, because we talk about waste in quite a general term, people sometimes think, oh, we'll take any waste and we can make magic from any waste. So
One man's trash is another man's treasure. And it's like, yo, it was this very, very specific kind of trash that I need.
yeah, and there are specialists who can make different things from different waste materials, but we know what waste we work with and we stick to that. But the same applies, just talking about another waste material which we've utilized in our retail stores is we've developed our own look and feel in our retail stores, and we see and treat the design of a retail store the same way as we do of a bag. And so the store needs to be a product in its own right, and it needs to stand to the same foundational values to what our business stands for and our bags and clothing stands for. So therefore, the material inputs and the design, all those considerations are the same when it comes to designing a retail store. And one of the materials we use in our store is a material called Infinite board. And basically, this is a material which is made from traditionally non-recyclable materials, toothpaste tubes, chip packets, and various other non-recyclables, which this company has innovated a way to shred it up, compress it, and then sort of glue it all together in a particular way, which makes this rigid board, which is actually very beautiful. And we've utilized that in the design of one of the materials in our stores. Again, they're champions in their waste interception, how they do it. And so I think it's important to just recognize, as we can't just make magic. I suppose we could make magic with most waste, but we're sticking to our lane, and that's working with particular types of waste. And therefore, we can ensure the quality and the longevity of the products we produce.
100%. And if we had to just double down on it right now, what are the main challenges that you're facing at the moment?
Our biggest challenges are going to be we're actually in a good space at the moment. We don't have major challenges. And I think, we over the last 10 years, we've really sort of peeled off different layers of risk. We've gone through different challenges. We've resolved them. We've improved, and we've removed a lot of layers of risk from our business now. I think in all businesses is the management of cash flow, and so cash flow is a critically important one, which has always got to be managed. And the reliability on outsource partners and suppliers always plays a risk in our business model. And again, that's, value of supply chain and how it can be disrupted. And, you know, we don't have the technical ability to make all of our products, and therefore certain new lines of products which need to launch on certain dates, we're at the mercy of a manufacturing partner. And if they don't deliver according to initial agreements, then you maybe miss the season when the product needs to be launched. And if it's a season specific product, you may have invested a huge amount of money into a product which needs to launch on a certain date in order to meet a certain season. And then if you launch it late, you miss the ability to capitalize on that season. So those are definitely risks and challenges in their own right. And we've gotten to a point now where, we've got a very good talent pool. So if one talent decides to leave, it's not like our business stops. We built in layers of talent now, and it's very different to where we were maybe 5, 6 years ago. We were a much smaller team, and if one person left, you would really feel it. Whereas now, somebody leaves, we've realized, there are other great people out there, and we've got an awesome team of people. We'll be totally fine. We'll survive. I suppose the big challenge is, global politics and what's going on in the world, and, how people are able to travel, how people are taxed, and how people, the disposable income that people have. But again, we speak to an audience that buys into a value system, and they're not just buying a product on the basis of it's a new trend, and it's like something which you just want to have because everybody else has it. We selling a product which has got a lot of great values attached to it, other than just the function which it does. And people are consuming in different ways. They're becoming a lot more educated in the way that they consume. And I do believe that we position ourselves to be more and more transparent, to empower the customer to have the knowledge to make their decisions. And I think in time, the people or the brands that aren't offering that transparency, those consumers are going to then question, well, if they're not showing the transparency, then what's going on? What are they doing? But absolutely, that in retail, you're only as good as you were yesterday and your last customer. So we've got to make sure that as we grow, we keep our finger on the button with customer service, making sure that, you treat every customer as if they're your only customer, and not to think, okay, well, now we've got thousands of customers. If we have one or two unhappy customers, that's fine. That's not the way that we behave. And it's very, very important for us to make sure that we're a customer-centric brand, and we behave in that way, and we look after every single customer as if they're our only customer. Continue to develop a great product, making sure that you don't just jump onto trends and look at, okay, well, they're doing this, we must do this. And, develop products which are true to Sealand and things which are unique to us, understand what our secret sauce is, and continue to keep that as a vital part of what we do, which is being creative, being innovative, making sure we make responsible decisions, and we continue to push the boundaries on smart, responsible materials, and continue to try to do as much business locally as we possibly can. But at the same time, look at how do we build the best products possible. And sometimes that's not always going to be possible to be done locally. But we are fundamentally rooted here in Cape Town, South Africa, and we will always look local before we look anywhere else.
The only other thing I want to know from you right now, or besides the usual question that I'm going to ask, is what does the future hold to you? What does the future look like for the next chapter of Sealand and Jasper?
So for Sealand, it's continuing to grow our footprint locally. We plan to open, probably about 5 more stores in the next 2 years or so. And we also are continuing to build a more innovative and user-friendly websites. So really investing time and energy into e-commerce and making the best possible experience for the customer. We're exploring some opportunities with 3PL set up internationally. So we're still busy with the due diligence, but it's looking like we're probably going to do something in the UK, and just to start servicing. We always have serviced a global market through e-commerce, but we can do a lot better when we have products on the ground in international territories, and we can be more competitive in terms of delivery times and various other things. And I think it's a matter of time, not a matter of time, but we certainly are looking at what the model would look like if we open Sealand stores internationally. So the international expansion is starting with e-commerce, and through that we will start to seek out opportunities for international retail stores.
So if you're taking over the world, very sustainably, basically.
Yeah. and we certainly are looking at more and more ranges of clothing. Yeah, so really focusing on apparel, but specifically the Sealand way. How do we do apparel in a way which is not creating more of existing things, but how do we create products which are done in a better way, designed in a way which are more traceable, longer lasting, function driven, and really speak truly to the Sealander.
Patagonia, watch out for this space. Jasper, finally, what's the one question that I haven't asked you, that I should have asked you, that you'd like to answer now?
Maybe what inspires me to do what I do.
There we go.
And the things which truly inspire me is the outdoors. It's the natural playgrounds which we're privileged to have access to here in Cape Town, the mountains and the oceans. You know, whether I'm going for a trail run and seeing the lichen growing on a rock and that inspires a new colorway, or while I'm sitting, in the ocean having a surf and giving me the ability to think more freely and openly about new collections and the way that things are moving and the shapes that's going to inspire new collections. All of these things are so important to how we behave as leaders, and not only the way that we behave, it also is around how we show up at work and the energy that we bring to work, and it allows us to develop these products which are true to the world which we live in Sealand. We can come to work and have a huge amount of fun playing with fabrics, playing with designs, and at the end of the day, just being really passionate about the things that we do, and knowing that we're making a difference in the things that we're doing and the brand that we're building, but at the same time having a huge amount of fun while doing it. And to portray that kind of feeling across the office and the team that works at Sealand has been such an important thing. So it's not only about me staying inspired, it's also about the inspiration that I bring into the company, into the culture, into the teams, to make sure that everyone stays inspired and everyone feels like they're contributing to the greater good of what Sealand does and what's required in this day and age.
Man, keep living your purpose. Thank you very much for sharing it. Thank you for sharing your story. Really inspiring what you've been able to do with Sealand. Can't wait to see you take this properly global now, for the third time, but doing it properly now. And yeah, wishing you all the best, man. Thank you for being on the Founder Files.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. It's been a great pleasure to share elements of the story, and I really hope that it has a positive impact and people enjoy the journey, and maybe there's one or two golden nuggets they can take out of it. So thanks very much, and have a great day.
Sure there will be.
Cheers, dude.
Come on. We didn't really talk about it much in the podcast, but me and Jasper spoke about it offline, and he really does walk the talk of sustainability, even as a human being in running his business, and the fact that he's got an amazing balance of being a father and still being able to spend a lot of time in nature whilst being able to run this company. And this is something that if you've been listening to us for a while, you know, something that's super important to me. And it's what we do at Metavolve, right? Is that we help entrepreneurs get more control over their time so that they can scale without everything having to depend on them. And Jasper's an example of what that means. And he is loving life at the moment, and the business is getting to a whole nother direction. So if this is something that you are struggling with, something that you would like to explore a conversation with, please reach out to me in the link of this podcast below. We'd love to have a chat about how is it that I can help you remove these dependencies that the business has on you and help you get to a whole new level of scale. Thanks again for listening to another full episode of the Founder Files. Really enjoy having you here and appreciate your support. Until next time, cheers for now.